edition of Office Hours with State Representative John Hampton. I am John Hampton. I'm delighted you've tuned in. Connecting the generations, one person at a time. That's the mission statement of my guests today. Deb Bibbins and Gary Sekorski represent For All Ages, a fantastic new nonprofit organization connecting the generations through a variety of exciting innovation and projects. So welcome to
Thanks for having us, John.
Office Hours.
Thank
Gary,
you for having us.
Thanks so much. Welcome. Tell us about I've got it on my mug here. It's a beautiful logo and great colors. Tell us about For All Ages. You guys have been everywhere. It's in newspapers, Facebook.
We're very excited about it. Yeah, so we've been around for only 10 months, so we're a brand new organization. And it actually was started after I saw my dad sort of lose some of his friends. They had passed before him. And so his social network had shrunk a little bit. And I saw that it was impacting him. Right? It was impacting his health and well-being. And after he passed last year, I started doing some more research around loneliness and isolation and the impact on health and realized that it's significant. And it was at that time that I said, okay, I've got to do something about this. There's got to be something that I can do to make an impact. And so I had actually reached out to an old friend of mine, Gary. Gary Sekorski and I have been friends for more than 30 years, and we talked about what we could do together to really have an impact, and we came up with the idea of connecting the generations and really reaching out to older adults and seeing how they can interact with youth, either in the form of mentoring youth or really just acting as a friend and sitting side by side and having fun together. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
So the reason I was involved was two reasons, really. Like everyone else, I'm also have parents, friends, older generations fighting the same kind of problems with isolation, loneliness. But the second part of it is I'm a mentor in West Hartford Public Schools, and I see the kind of impact that somewhat of an older generation like me has on even the youth. So it was really kind of a double-edged reason why I came on board.
So you are a 501c3
We are.
nonprofit organization.
We are. We accomplished that this summer.
Okay, that was
very pleased about that.
Epic, right? To
Absolutely.
Start that process.
Absolutely.
And you have a board of directors?
We have a board of directors and
An advisory board. I'm thrilled to be on the advisory board.
Thank you for being on our advisory board.
Yeah, I support your mission.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been growing as far as building our board, building our volunteer base. We'd love to have more volunteers as we continue to grow. And we've been received really well, both within the Simsbury community, where we've decided to kick off our programs, and in broader, throughout Connecticut. So we're grateful to have a UConn professor on our board who does a lot of work around isolation and loneliness of older adults. And we're grateful to have a senior executive from the Hartford on our board. And so we're continuing to grow. We're actually we've been talking about what we're doing this year, and we've had some people reach out to us, and we're going to see how that goes. So
talk to me about the statistics of isolation and loneliness. We read a lot about that.
We do.
And why is that happening, do you think? Number one, right off the top of my head, people are living longer.
Yes.
Which is good news.
Yes.
The bad news, I'm not sure we're doing enough as a society to sustain older generation in terms of healthcare and transportation and housing and things like that. But what other factors are contributing? Is it our cell phones and iPhones and computers?
I think it's happened slowly over a number of years. And I think 50 years ago, when the whole idea of developing elderly housing facilities came about, it was a fantastic idea for people. But the downside of that, though, is that it really
segmented
over. It segregates them, right? And so our communities sort of accidentally have become segregated by age over, like I said, over a number of years. And now, as you mentioned, people are living longer. And so a lot of folks are living in those housing facilities longer, right? And they're not connected with their community any longer. And so for us, a
Right.
big part of what we talk about is weaving communities and reconnecting communities again.
I saw this great article, or maybe it was on the news, about a college campus that had merged with a assisted living,
Right.
like literally right next to each other.
Yeah.
So the young and the old are interacting. They're taking classes together.
I think that's fabulous.
And it's vital and
Yeah.
and vibrant. And
Well, there's benefits to both, right? So there's
Absolutely.
benefits to older adults as well as
Yeah.
the youth populations. Cigna put out a survey, or a report after having done a survey very recently, last year, and they found that 50% of people in the United States are reporting being lonely. And for the first time ever, we've got young adults that are feeling lonely at a higher rate than older adults. And so we keep that top of mind as we're out thinking about, well, what's next for our next set of programs? How do we reach those younger adults, college-age students who are reporting being lonely, right? And so what you just mentioned is linking older adult housing facilities on a college campus or nearby a college campus. It's fabulous to be able to do that because it's going to be beneficial for both populations.
So what are your short-term goals and your long-term goals for the organization?
Sure. So short term, what we're really talking about is getting our feet wet with,
Building the
with
organization.
what programs work, what programs don't work, and then foundationally building an operation that is sustainable over the longer term. And we're doing both simultaneously. So, for instance, in Simsbury, we decided to start our programs in Simsbury because Simsbury is one of the 4 towns in the state of Connecticut that has signed up to strive to become age-friendly. And so we thought, well, what better place to start than one of those 4 towns? Happens to be where I have lived for more than 25 years, and so it made sense. And combine that with Simsbury's 350th, we thought it would be really nice to come up with a couple of the programs where we could have a positive impact for the community in celebration of Simsbury's 350th. And both of those programs are going really well. I don't know if you want to add to that on our programs?
No, that's exactly right. There's 4 towns, as Deb mentioned. And just before I talk about Simsbury, but our overall goal is to take it throughout Greater Hartford and then ultimately through the whole state of Connecticut.
Right.
So just to kind of frame it up a little bit, because the opportunity was here with the 350th,
Right.
and we've got a couple programs going on with that, but we're certainly looking towards other towns for 2020.
Is this modeled on another program in another state, or is this first of its kind?
Well, there are some intergenerational nonprofits that operate in different states. A lot of them focus on how do you bring sort of co-housing facilities, if you will. So you can have a daycare within, an elderly housing facility. Yeah. But there are a few around the country that are doing things similar to what we're doing. When we took
Right.
a look at it and took a scan throughout the United States, there's only a handful, though, that seem to be doing what we're doing. Very intentionally focused on intergenerational connection. Certainly there are mentoring programs that have been in existence for a number of years that do that, but that's not the primary focus. And we're turning intergenerational connection into
Right.
the primary focus of every program that we do. If we take our Simsbury Rocks program.
Yeah, tell us about that.
That we're running, it's been fabulous. So we're halfway through. We've just completed our 6th session. So far we've connected 150 older adults and youth for 90 minutes, and the rocks that are being painted.
Oh, they're painting the rocks.
They're painting
Right.
rocks. They come
Together.
together for 90 minutes to paint rocks. But it's not about painting the rocks. The rocks are a tool for enabling the connection.
Right.
So the first half an hour of every event, we actually have icebreaker questions. And there's no painting. We don't put the paintbrushes out, and people just sit and talk and get to know each other and ask each other questions. And
Where do you do this?
So we've been doing them once a month at Eno,
Okay.
and then once a month at one of the housing facilities in and around Simsbury. And so we're trying to reach people that can get to Eno but we're also trying to reach people that are at a housing facility and may not have the transportation that can get to Eno. So we thought by holding the
Right,
sessions
various locations.
at both types of locations, we could reach as many people as possible.
Will you be doing nursing facilities as well at some point?
Yes, so to the extent that we can get folks to participate, absolutely. That would be the only, so we've been at McLean, for instance.
Oh, good.
But we worked with their independent living folks. And that was based on McLean's thinking of, what made the most amount of sense. So we looked to guidance from them also to give us some help around, what population of people do you think would have fun and be engaged? I'd love to expand that.
I think it'd be great to expand. I know McLean quite well, I think.
Yeah.
The independent living as well is good, but there's also a lot of isolated people who are in the different units who, crave activity and more than just the normal
Agreed.
painting classes or whatever, or photography classes that they're fine, but they're doing them just together and without, and I know when a senior sees a baby or a child
Right.
or a teenager, they get
Their eyes light up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like flipping a switch.
It's medicine.
We've seen immediate response. Just to give you an idea, a couple of examples. Our very first night that we were painting the rocks at McLean, at the end of the night, we actually had a Girl Scout come running back into the room because she wanted to give her new friend a hug.
Oh, that's sweet.
And it was really quite magical, really. We watched it happen. And in another session, we had a woman come in and actually thank us and thank the Girl Scouts, who happened to be the group of young people we had at the time, on how she was so happy because she had not been out of her home in so long. She had recently lost her husband, and she was just thanking us over and over. So the response has been just like snapping your finger. It really was quite incredible.
Yeah, transformational.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about these Adirondack chairs.
Sure. So that was our other idea for a program, was taking and bringing in a group of older adults from in and around Simsbury to work with the tech ed students at the high school to redesign Adirondack chairs and then to build them together as a collective team.
Why Adirondack chairs?
Well, why not? Why not Adirondack chairs?
They're great. I love them.
So the idea was let's build something that we can then place throughout Simsbury as part of Simsbury's 350th.
Cool.
Right, and so we've now have, after 10 weeks of the same group of older adults coming together with the same group of teens, we have seen them redesign the chairs so they're easier to get in and out of, and have built them. And they're beautiful chairs. They're made out of white cedar.
Wow.
They've got the word Sesquicentennial, which means 350th,
nice.
engraved across the front. And they've all been finished sanded, and they're all waiting to be
Beautiful.
painted now. So our
Who's
second.
going to paint them?
Well, we've got a group of 20 high school art students registered. And we've got 11 older adults, artists, some professional artists, and other just people that want to be involved from in and around Simsbury that are getting ready to paint. And we kick that off on January 30th. So there'll be about 10 hours of sessions, an intergenerational connection between that group of older adults and youth. And the end result will be our chairs, which will be presented to our sponsors on April 22nd.
Oh, you have sponsors of the chairs.
We
Yes.
do.
Who's the sponsor?
So we're looking for 2 additional sponsors.
So per chair, you have a
There's
sponsor?
5 pairs.
5
5
pairs.
pairs. Okay,
yes.
cool.
So we've got Fitzgerald's has
Nice.
sponsored a pair, and McLean has sponsored a pair,
Great.
and Anthology has sponsored a pair.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And
What's the sponsorship? So because you need 2 more, right?
right,
We do.
right.
What's
So
the-
we've got a variety of
opportunities?
offers actually, but for those 3, they've all decided to buy the pair so that they can keep them permanently
Nice.
and it's $1,000 to buy the pair.
Wonderful.
And actually, what we heard was, gee, you underpriced them because if you go out on the commercial
Oh my
market
gosh,
to buy a
You can buy the
hand-painted,
plastic ones for nothing, but the real,
Yeah, the real chairs
Adirondack
can be
chairs
$1,000
are
a piece.
right?
the old
Right.
school chairs there.
So we've got a pair for $1,000, and so they've each bought them, and they're going to be placed in a public space so that people can go and visit them. They're not going to be, inside McLean or something. They're going to be outside in a public space, and we hope to put together a list of where they're all going to be, and then both our residents in town and visitors can go and can sit in them and see them and take pictures with them.
Right, right.
Will any of them be near the statues because they're coming back? The
Actually,
chamber statues. That'll be an interesting
it
combination.
might be.
Maybe.
Perhaps,
Might be.
yeah, sure. They certainly could be. We
That
don't
could
know.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those will be out this spring, you imagine?
Yes, so
Just-
April
yes.
22nd,
Okay.
we're having a session at the program room in the library, and we're bringing together all of the older adults and all of the students that have either worked on the carpentry side or the painting side, and we're going to bring the sponsors together, and we're going to,
Nice.
as a group, turn over the chairs to the sponsors.
Nice.
So
Wonderful.
starting after April, they'll be out with our sponsors throughout town, and people will be able to go and visit them.
So this will be a good time to mention your website. We'll put it up on the screen if people want to sponsor. They can, right?
Absolutely.
Or give you money.
Oh, absolutely.
Donations, you take 'em?
Donations are
Sure.
always
Sure.
welcome.
Yeah. So what's your website?
It is www.foralages.org.
Good.
Yeah.
So that's on there. The information on the chairs.
It is, right on our
and-
homepage.
And the rocks. What are you calling it? Simsbury Rocks?
Simsbury Rocks.
Nice.
Right?
Rocks.
Why not, right?
2020. Simsbury
Why
Rocks.
not?
And those are going to be distributed.
May 22nd,
Yeah.
we kick off our scavenger hunt.
Okay.
So Gary and I will be numbering all of the rocks, 1 to 350.
Wow.
And we're making up a little card that will accompany each rock, and we're going to put them throughout Simsbury.
Neat.
Starting May 22nd at 10 a.m., people can go out and look for the rocks. And we're trying to be as age-friendly as we can with where we're placing the rocks.
Right.
So that people can find them. I think they'll be in plain sight, I guess is the way that we've been saying it. They'll be where people can find them and throughout all of Simsbury. And you'll know when you find one because it'll have a number on it. It'll be accompanied with a card. And then what we're asking people to do is to post a picture of them holding the rock on our Facebook page
Nice.
or our Instagram page.
Fun.
Or if people are not internet connected, they can bring the rock here into the senior center for verification.
Okay.
And certain rocks are going to win people prizes. So that's the
Oh.
fun part of it. You're going to find a rock. That in and
Right.
of itself is
Fun.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you might win a prize also. So that'll be extra special.
Now, you're talking about creating relationships, which is great. So you mentioned that young woman who came back and
Right.
and hugged. How are you going to envision sustaining those relationships?
Right.
So friendships obviously are being made, which is great,
Yes.
either through the chair building or the rocks. Is there a way then to, continue that relationship where, that girl continues to visit Mrs.
Right.
Smith, or
Right.
how do you?
So one of the things that we've done, that's a hard question, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the difficulty of how do you...
You can't force it,
Right,
No.
you can't force it.
but how do you
And so-
continue it organically? So-
What we've done with the Simsbury Rocks program is partner with Girl Scouts in town, right? And so what we know is that we can't do it all ourselves. We need to work with organizations that already have groups that are organized in some way, shape, or form. And so for Simsbury Rocks, we've brought together Girl Scouts in town to work with all of the sessions and to
Right.
connect with the older adults. And what we've done is ask those Girl Scout leaders that have been in attendance and really just some of the general folks associated with Girl Scouts in town to talk about, well, what comes next, right? And how do we take it from here? Do you want to go back to McLean? Do you want to go back to wherever? And how do we continue it? So that part, some of it is to be determined, to be quite honest with you. When Gary and I sat down last summer and talked about our first two programs, we said, all right, do we want to have everything figured out before we start? Or are we just going to start and then sort of figure it out as we go? And so we actually decided on the latter. And so we've been working for, trying to talk about what do we do next, right? And to your point, well, how do we sustain the relationships? Can we have Girl Scouts in town continue to go back to McLean and continue to go back to other places?
Yeah, I think about my father who's at McLean. He's a retired doctor,
Right.
and he tends to be a loner, and
Yeah.
he's 85. And I thought, gosh, I wonder if we could set up a mentor program with a pre-med student somewhere and bring them together. And so have you thought of things like that where you've got people
have.
of, so a young artist is connected with an older artist, and kind of like you mentioned that the mentor
Right.
mode, I think is so important. And I think it's gotten lost, that kind of respect and conviviality and
Yeah.
relationships with
Yeah,
elderly.
the culture's kind of led itself down that path. One way to think about it is we're trying to differentiate our programs from other programs, meaning that it's not just a program where, let's say, the Girl Scouts are going to go paint rocks one time and then that's it, just for the sake of painting the rocks. The idea is to start friendships, really, to make the connection. So the hope is that once when that older adult meets that young Girl Scout, for example, that they continue that relationship without even any other facilitation on our part going forward. Right? When you make a new friend, you want to speak to your new friend. So so on the other side, it goes both ways now, right?
Right.
So it's not just about, those programs are wonderful that go out and they draw for the day, or they play board games one day. Those are great things. But I think the reason we're different is that we're trying to connect them both ways, in ways that now becomes forms of friendships, and you're getting out of that isolation and loneliness.
So, to answer your question around mentorships.
Or kind of like a big brother, big sister program
Yes.
for elder and young people.
Yes. So we have talked about that,
Yeah.
and we've talked about what is possible to build and how would we build that and what would that look like and what would that feel like. We've seen the relationships that have been built over 10 weeks with the carpenters, people with carpentry background coming into the high school and mentoring the youth that are in the tech ed class. And it was fabulous, right? And so what I would say is we can't solve everything, right? And so, and yet we're thinking about, well, what comes next, right? So what could we design and what could we build, whether it's technology, right? So some type of tool that enables people to find each other and connect and then enable that connection.
Like a Match.com
Yes.
for younger and older people.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've talked about that, and we've talked about, well, what would that look and feel like? I think if, we've got a little bit more work to do on that, to be honest with you, because that's, it's hard to figure out how we're going to connect every older adult that's home and that's lonely, right? So, top of mind for me is thinking about what made sense, what would have made sense for my dad? What would he have liked to participate in? And how would he have connected, right? Technology, I think, is something that can be a tool. And thinking about, well, can you offer to mentors, 10 different things, and maybe they choose one of them and then connect. We don't have that figured out yet, to be very honest.
Well, maybe-
but no one else has done it either.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we're thinking about it.
As a member of your advisory committee, I'm going to keep the ideas coming.
That's fine. That's great. We love
It's a key
it.
part of our strategy for this year, because we want to do something that's sustainable, or that we can build upon year over year. So that's exactly what we're working on right now.
Right.
So you're actually looking kind of beyond May into next
Absolutely.
Oh, sure we
fall
are.
and
Yes.
next year. So.
Absolutely. So we were already talking about where our next set of programs are going to be, what they're going to look like. The good thing about what we've done so far is that we've built a process, right? And so with our chairs program, that's a process where we know now the things that we need to do in order to implement the same type of program in another town, right? And so the first time, for Gary and I, this year has been so exciting because the first time we do anything, it then enables us to say, okay, now we know how we can do it again, right? And so we don't have a roadmap because there aren't a lot of these programs around. And to our knowledge, we're the only nonprofit in Connecticut with this intergenerational focus, to our knowledge. And so we don't have a roadmap, and we're figuring it out as we go. And so to be able to step back and say, all right, now we've got a process in place where we can replicate a program which essentially is a 20-week program. With multiple older adults coming into the high school over multiple weeks, we can take that to other towns now. It may look and feel different. It may not be Adirondack chairs. It could be something totally different.
Right.
Whatever we design it to be, but we now know who we need to reach out to, who we need to get on board within the town, within the school. And so
Right.
it's a nice...
One of the things as part of our process is making sure that we're doing surveys with both the participants of the younger and older generations, pre and post.
Right.
And that's something we're going to continue on at all because we're trying to measure ourselves. Right. The first thing you have to do is see how well you can improve, see what your results are, see what you do for the next time.
Right.
So that's been, we're learning there too. We don't know all the answers there, but that's a big part because you really got to know where you stand and how to improve for the next time.
How are your finances?
They're positive, which is good.
Good.
So,
How are you
but they're-
fundraising? Just online with the chairs, sponsorships?
Yes.
And do you
Yes.
do an individual giving program? Or?
Oh, absolutely. So we've been, we ran something at year end. It was
Yep.
called our Spread Joy campaign.
Okay.
Where we were asking people to donate, and every $10 basically enables us to connect an older adult with a youth.
Nice.
And so we were able to raise some funds
Good.
through that Spread Joy campaign, which is wonderful. And we've been successful with actually receiving a few, I'll call them micro grants.
Nice.
So AARP Connecticut
Great.
just gave us a $2,500 grant as part of their Livable Communities program.
Wonderful.
To support our Simsbury Rocks program. And then we've received a couple of additional smaller grants,
Smaller grants, yeah.
Right.
from other foundations. And when you first start as an organization, this is the most difficult thing to overcome.
Of course.
Right? Is you're starting from scratch. You have no history that you can point to, and so it's difficult to raise funds. So we're grateful for the individuals that have donated to us so far. We're going to continue to reach out to people and reach out to corporations and organizations to see if they'll support us.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to join me today, and I know you've been getting some great press, and you're on Facebook, right? So
We are.
kinda
We're on
like you
Facebook,
on
forollages.org.
But you've had some great local press, I've noticed.
Yes, so we were in
which
Valley
is-
Life,
yeah.
January's Valley Life, which is wonderful.
And so you're getting attention. All your hard work is really coming to fruition, and it's so exciting. And I wanted
We're
to thank
thrilled.
you both for
Thank you.
for your efforts as vice chair of the Aging Committee in the legislature. It's so important that our elderly are taken care of and they age gracefully and with quality of life. And this is one great way to connect, and it's a good way to get our kids off their phones.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
actually have
Sure.
a conversation.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
talk
we don't allow phones during our sessions.
Great. And talk about each other's experiences.
Yeah.
And what a great concept, great mission to connect the generations. So it's for all ages. Again, I encourage you to check out the website, get involved, reach out to Deb and Gary, volunteer,
Yes, volunteer
give
with
money. And I wish you all the best, and
Thank
I
you.
hope you'll come back and for another show, and you'll be bigger and better and
us. We're
even
planning
better.
on it.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks a million for coming.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you
John.
next
Thanks, John.
time. Thank you so much, folks at home, for joining us for another episode of Office Hours. We will see you the next time. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.